Welcome to step 3, and in step 3 we're going to talk about your colors and your color palette. Now your color palette is as important as your logo, if not more important. I know this sounds quite surprising because when we think about a brand, we really think about the logo. That's what we associate brands with. But the colors really set the tone, the vibe, the mood, and your color palette will be used everywhere and on everything. You're going to use it on graphics, on website buttons, on some banners, on your packaging. It really is going to be an important part of your brand. So we are going to use your mood board to extract colors from it and create your color palette, which should be made of 5 main colors. Around that, it's okay if it's only 4, it's okay if you go to 6, but don't go overboard. 5, maybe 6 maximum. And we want to also have 2 colors as part of these 5 colors that are your main principal colors. Something that's important here as well is to remember to think about how easy it will be to use these colors when it comes to designing graphics or banners or anything really for your brand. So for that reason, it's important to keep contrast in mind when you look at a color palette to see how easy it is going to be to use in practice. So let's look at this example. You can see a color palette. We've got some really nice tones of purple and a pink and a yellow. And although they all work really nicely as a color palette, of course, if that matches your brand personality, that's not necessarily the colors for everyone, but it's a good example of a color palette that works. But we want to make sure that we have 2 colors that are 2 main colors are quite contrasted. So here to the left, we have the pink and then we have the yellow. These would be the 2 main colors. And if you look at those 2 examples below with the pink square and then the purple square on the right, we've added some text to it in the other brand colors. So the dark purple, yellow, light purple, and then that gray. And as you can see on this pink background, the yellow is really the only one that you would be able to use to create, for example, a promotional graphic for social media or to use as a button on your website or anything like that. Because if we were to use a purple and a pink together, they don't really stand out because they're not contrasted enough, and so it's hard to read, it's hard on the eyes. So it's important when you pick your colors to remember that and to really keep in mind, how am I going to be using those colors and will it be easy to read when I write text in those colors and use them together. So let's dive into Adobe colors together and I'll show you how to use your mood board to create your color palette, and the link to Adobe Color is in your workbook. Okay, so following the link in your workbook, you should get to a page on adobe.com called Color. And this is your Adobe Color interface. This is completely free and it's a really fun way to find a color palette. If you've ever tried looking for color palettes and coming up with color palette yourself, it can turn into a big project because there's just so many possibilities that it's really easy to get overwhelmed and to end up having analysis paralysis because we don't know what to pick out of all of those options. So what this tool is going to help you do is use your mood board, which you've spent some time curating and creating first in Pinterest and then in Canva, and use this image as the base of your color palette. So not only it's going to force you to limit yourself when you play with your colors, but also it will be really helpful because it will reflect the mood that we captured in your mood board. So you want to go on Extract Theme, the second option here, and then we want to select the file on your computer that is your mood board, so the file that you just downloaded from Canva. And so in my case, we called it mood board example, so I'm just going to select that one and click on open, and it's going to load it up for me. Now, based on that, it's already selected a color palette for me. It will give you a few more options though, depending on if you want something that's more. Now, I'm just going to quickly go back to English here so that I can read what's here in a way that's understandable for me. But so yeah, depending on the option that you pick here, it's going to select different colors inside of your mood board for you. So this is the one that they call colorful. Then we have bright, muted, deep, dark, And Known is where you select the color that you want on the mood board. So you can drag and drop any of those little circles in the Known option here to change up the colors and pick the one that you think are best. Now, don't pay too much attention to what they actually say as options here and what they are, because if we go back to bright, for example, this isn't necessarily a bright color palette. It's quite toned down actually, and it's really black, gray, and a blue. So it's less about what they're called and more about the option that they give you, because the way this works is that Adobe use an algorithm to pick colors in different combinations. So some of those palettes will have the same type of colors, which is called a monochromatic color palette. So it's really using one color and then variation of this same color. And others will have a lot more contrast. There is no right and wrong answer here regarding which option is best. You know what you want to extract from this mood board and what you think best represent your brand. And so if you feel that, for example, the colorful option is the best, then go for that. If you prefer the muted option, go for that. And you can, of course, always adjust slightly as well. So for example, I quite like the colorful option, but I don't really like this orange or peach color, which is not necessarily something that I want represented in the brand. So in this case, I could click on it and instead reassign a color, for example, the blue on the bag here. Same with this beige is, for example, I don't really like the beige. I can click on it and drag it to another color if it works better for me. I actually quite like the beige, so I'm going to leave that in. And so have a play around with your mood board and the color palette tool in there, but don't go too crazy as well, because I know that from the moment you realize that you can drag those little points everywhere and make your own color, it's easy to get quite overwhelmed. So use it more as a tool to readjust a color that you feel really doesn't work with the rest or for what you have in mind. But generally speaking, try to limit yourself, because if not, this can become quite a headache and you will spend days on it, which we want to avoid. So use the tools that's there. It's smart enough to detect good color palette from a mood board, which is what we've done here. And when you're happy with it, you want to note the hex code at the bottom here. So that's the little code with a hashtag in front of it. And these are your color codes. So once you have this code, if you copy it and you paste it in Canva or on Google or in any design software, they will all know exactly what color that is, and that's this pink here. So I'll just show you as an example. I'm just going to paste that into Google. And as you can see, it recognized the color immediately. So these are really your references for your colors. So those codes are very important, and these are the ones that you want to note down. To finish this palette here, I'm going to decide on the final colors that I want. And as I was saying before, I think that this peachy kind of orange, the mix between orange and brown here, kind of gives the palette a bit almost too soft of an atmosphere, and we wanted something that was a little bit more classic and bold and a bit stronger. So this is quite a soft color, almost like a blush. So I'm not quite happy with necessarily this one. So instead, what I'm going to do is decide that this is going to turn into a black, which I feel is very present in this mood board and something that I want to be reflected. This one here, this color, I'm going to turn into this nice kind of blue, deep blue here. I'm going to keep this one, which I think is a nice light color that contrasts really well with the others so that it's easy to use in my design. And I'm also going to keep the pink for that pop of color that we talked about when we were in step 1 in the inspiration board. I had various color in there as a little pop to break down the more classic kind of sense of aesthetic that we're working with. And so I'm quite happy with this final palette. So I will write down all my codes and I'm done with my color palette.